How do you feel, mighty Megatron?
Here's a hint.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. In today's review we're going to be taking a look at the Transformers Kingdom core class Starscream. Easily the best core class figure that we have gotten from this line so far, and despite that being rather upfront, I'm almost certain that the vast majority of you all will indeed agree with me towards the end of this video. This figure in some regards almost puts the Earthrise Voyager class figure to shame and leaves me hoping that Hasbro will indeed take this figure, upscale it, add a few additional paint apps and of course some additional engineering, and give us a more updated and what could be the better version of Starscream. Getting straight into the details, here we have core class Starscream's head sculpt. Now, as mentioned, in my opinion, I do believe that some aspects of this figure are superior when compared to the larger, more expensive Voyager class, and the head sculpt is certainly one of those aspects. In my opinion, this looks a heck of a lot more G1 accurate than compared to the rather circular design that we got from the original Earthrise version. Of course, Starscream in G1 did have a slightly more boxed off head design, and I for sure believe that the Kingdom core class version captures that perfectly. Not to mention that we also have a ton of paintwork, such as an entire helmet section which has been decked out in this really awesome glossy black metallic paint app. You can see that the entire head, even the back of it, has been completely painted despite the base colour being a dull grey plastic. As we spin around here to the front, you can see that we've got some fantastic definition there to the sculpt, such as the eyes, nose, mouth, and even a tiny section there for the chin. You can also see some nice sculpt work towards the sides of Starscream's helmet, and as we take a look here towards what I believe are the intakes of the jet, you can see that these two have also been detailed really nice with the tiny little arrows clearly sculpted here at the top. This entire region here too has also been painted in a really nice looking red, and I was quite surprised to see how much paint this particular core class figure does indeed have applied to him. We also do have some nice turbine detailing here, which of course has been picked out in a metallic silver. The cockpit has got some yellow paintwork, and the detail on this figure is certainly up to standard with what we got from the original Voyager class release. As we take a look here at Starscream's null rays, these in my opinion look as if they have literally been shrunken down from the Voyager class mold. These here look very accurate to the show. As we take a look at the forearm sections, these two have been completely painted in this really nice blue, which once again I was not expecting, and considering they have decided to paint the forearm completely blue, it does lead me to question as to why they did not just cast this in blue plastic. But nevertheless, you can see here that we've got some really nice looking sculpt work, the thumbs and fingers clearly picked out there with some exceptional looking sculpt work. As we take a look here towards the crutch plate of Starscream, once again very accurate to how he appeared in the show, and of course to how the actual Voyager class figure looks. It is merely the lower section of the figure where some of the paint apps are missing, so it would have been nice if we could have got some red here for the crutch, and then of course some blue highlights here for the shins. But nevertheless, I believe the sculpt work here has come out really nicely. They have decided to completely paint the feet here blue, and these fin pieces too have also been decked out in a nice blue colour scheme. As we turn our attention here to the back, in my opinion, I actually do believe the way they've handled this nose cone is better than the Earthrise version, and of course I'll bring that figure out for a comparison to go into more detail later on in the review by explaining exactly what I mean. But just taking a look here, this actually tabs into the back of Starscream and doesn't flop around like the Earthrise version does. We also do have some nice details here, such as the Decepticon insignias and some red stripes. These are all details that I maybe would have liked to have seen here on these wings, but considering this is a $10 figure, I definitely think that what we have is more than up to standard. As far as articulation is concerned, Starscream here does have a swivel joint at the head which could rotate the full 360. We do get ball joints here at the arms which can rotate forwards and backwards as well as out to the sides, although not to a complete 90-degree angle. The null rays here can indeed remove, and I would recommend removing them when you do actually begin to manipulate the lower elbow joint. So we do get a 90-degree bend here at the elbow as well as of course some rotation, and I would be wary of the clearance as of course you do not want to scrape any of this lovely blue paint application that has indeed been applied. We don't unfortunately get any form of wrist rotation, although the wings are on slight ratchet joints so you can hinge those out to the sides. You could even hinge them all the way out to the back, or you could create a slightly more flat look if you so desired. No form of waist rotation, although we do get ball joints here at the legs which can kick forwards that far, back that far, out to the sides. We do get a slight rotation due to this ball joint, although the main rotation joint is here at the knee, as this too is also on a ball joint. We get a 90 90-degree range of motion there, and unfortunately the feet, much like the core class Optimus Prime, are indeed static, however have been moulded in a way just to give you a slightly more dynamic range of motion. So overall, as far as sculpt, paintwork and articulation is concerned, I believe this to be one of the better Legend class / core class figures that I have had the privilege to handle. Now, you saw in regards to the null rays that they can store on the top of the shoulders, or if you wish for him to hold them a little more Netflix anime accurate, you can indeed take the peg here and of course port that there into the hand, which is definitely a display option, and these do have the compatibility of actually wielding blast effects on them if you wish to create a slightly more dynamic look. Here for a War for Cybertron Starscream size comparison, of course we have the newly released core class version compared to what should be the superior Voyager class. However, when actually having these figures standing side by side, despite their scale, they are pretty much exactly the same, especially as far as the detailing is concerned. You can see that here for the head sculpt, the core class version in my opinion is better, as it better matches his original G1 appearance, where of course this version was slightly too circular for my taste. We of course do have the same amount of detail here for the intakes. The entire chest region too I also believe to be equally as detailed, and as we take a look here towards the forearms and of course the shoulders, these are very similar as far as sculpt work is concerned. The null rays are the same. As we take a look here towards the thighs, these two are the same. The lower leg is also the same. We of course do have some hollow spacing on the inner section of the leg. However, this is a $10 figure, so of course it's not going to be nowhere near as built out as this particular version, and overall I think that you're definitely getting your bang for your buck with this figure. Spinning around here to the back, you can see that with the Earthrise version we did have this section which did slightly strut out, which meant that this here didn't necessarily have a place to securely tab into. However, here with the New Kingdom version, this does stay very securely and I do not have any issues with this flopping around, so that is definitely an area of which I believe is improved with a significantly cheaper and smaller core class figure. And if Hasbro were able to accomplish so much with this scale, it definitely begs to question as to why they did borrow so much of the engineering from the original Classics version and did not opt to give us entirely new engineering, as I believe if they did, this could have been a lot better than it actually did turn out to be. For some further comparisons, here we have core Starscream compared next to Optimus Prime and Bumblebee. Here he is alongside the core class Rat Trap, of which was my favourite core class figure until Starscream did come and completely knocked Rat Trap from being first place. Here we have core Starscream compared next to the Quintesson Pit of Judgment Kranix, and here he is next to the Sharkticon. So you can see he's definitely a little taller than compared to some of these figures, and in regards to core class scale between some of the G1 characters, he scales really nicely. Turning to transformation, if you are not convinced by this figure being potentially better than the Earthrise Voyager yet, I believe that you more than likely will be after you see the transformation. As mentioned throughout this review, they were able to accomplish so much with this smaller scale that it really does make me feel as if the Voyager class figure was incredibly lazy. So to begin with, I would recommend taking the null rays off, as if I had a minor nitpick, they are slightly too loose for my taste and will more than likely pop off throughout the duration, so just take these sections here and of course remove them. You are going to want to ensure that you have the elbows rotated like this, as this back tab will peg into this wing, so straighten these sections here out, take this and snap that securely there into place. Of course repeat the same process here on the opposite side, so just clip that in there. We can then take this section here and you're going to want to disengage that and ratchet that out to the side. Of course come here to this side and repeat the same process. Take Starscream's head, pull this section forwards and down. We can then take the nose cone, flip this entire region up as well, and once you do disengage it from this locking mechanism, it will allow you to take the front intakes and shift them forwards here on a double hinge joint. You're then going to want to take the legs and of course tab them there into place, and this was a really nice form of engineering which I was not expecting for a core class. You can actually flip the wings around here for jet mode, so you just want to slightly pry these sections out. You can see how they are tabbed in. That will then allow you to rotate this all the way around until they do indeed snap into their new configuration. Of course repeat the same process here on the opposite side, so just hinge this down, clip that there back into place. You're then going to want to take the legs here, hinge those out of the way, as this entire assembly is going to rotate on this pin joint all the way around, so you are essentially flipping the wings and the torso in the opposite direction. We can then take the intakes here, recess these backwards on this double hinge joint, just like so. You can then take the nose cone, straighten this section here out, and the head will indeed fit into this tiny cavity. So just bring this section up and over. What you'll then want to do is turn your attention here to the legs. You can see two tabs which will sandwich between these two tabs. So just bring this down and of course snap all of this securely into place, turn your attention here to this side. I would recommend tabbing this particular region of the torso in before you tab this side in, as it is the larger of the two. We have 2 slots on either sides of the kneecaps that these 2 tabs will peg into, so just clip all of that there into place, and of course snap that securely there as well. Turn your attention here to the front, fold out the wings. We can then bring in the null rays, and these will peg into the exact same ports that we saw in robot mode, so just clip them in there securely as well, and repeat the exact same process. And with all that being said, here we have Kingdom Starscream fully transformed up into what is, in my opinion, a really awesome and very G1 accurate looking alternate form. As mentioned at the beginning of this review, I am thoroughly impressed with what Hasbro were able to accomplish within the $10 budget, and it wasn't until I got this figure that I really began to see just how lazy the Earthrise Voyager class figure was. If they had decided to scrap the idea of borrowing engineering from the Classics version, I believe that Voyager class could have been a lot better than it actually was. As this figure is near enough perfect, I would really like to see them actually take the engineering from this character and even the sculpt work to some extent in regards to the head sculpt, upscale it, add a few more joints, as honestly the articulation is more or less the same as what we got with the Voyager class. Apply additional paint apps and I believe you could potentially have one of the best Starscreams on the market. Taking a look here at the detail, you can see that as far as panel lining is concerned, this figure is decked out with sculpted in surface detail. We of course do have some nice yellow here for the cockpit, despite this hinge looking slightly ugly. I don't believe there is too much to complain about, seeing as how small this character really is. We of course have the red stripes and the Decepticon insignias. You saw earlier on that these fins here are painted in blue, and as far as undercarriage is concerned, once again, considering the scale, I really don't believe this here to be all that bad whatsoever. We of course do have Starscream's head visible, and if you do turn him upside down, you can for sure see where most of the robot mode parts do end up. There is really no area which is concealed all that well. Of course we do have the fists hanging out, and it maybe would have been cool to see these sections here fold into the hollow cavities, but as mentioned, the null rays do hide them, and honestly I believe it to be a minor nitpick for what is otherwise a really well done $10 action figure. For some alternate mode size comparisons, here we have core Starscream compared next to the Earthrise version, and as mentioned, for the most part these figures here are pretty much exactly the same in regards to the detail. It is merely just the scale in which they differ. As we take a look at them both from the underside, I believe the kibble is equally as bad. Of course this version did have the capability of actually tucking the fists away, but if this version did have that as well, I believe this would be pretty much identical as far as the undercarriage kibble is concerned. If we bring in some other core class figures, here we have him compared next to Bumblebee and of course Optimus Prime, and out of them all he is by far the largest as far as his alternate mode is concerned, so really a very substantial core figure. And if so far you have been hesitant to actually pick up any of these core figures, and maybe you are looking to pick up one of these figures to see for yourself what the quality is like, I think Starscream is probably the best figure to pick up out of this line so far, even over Rat Trap, which I was thoroughly impressed by. And so some final thoughts. Colour me impressed by Kingdom Core Class Starscream. I'm pretty certain that there will be many of you watching this review who are thinking that I'm absolutely bonkers for basically saying that this figure is better than the significantly larger Voyager class Starscream, and of course the Voyager class Starscream is a little more articulated than this figure. However, you do have to consider the price point of the Kingdom Core class figure. It is only $10, whereas the Voyager class figure, at least here in the UK, would be priced at roughly $30, and personally I believe you are getting just as good of a robot mode with this figure as you are with that Voyager class. I also do believe that the engineering on this character is better when compared to the Voyager class figure, as of course that figure did borrow heavy inspiration from the original classic Starscream, and personally I believe that that was perhaps a downfall on Hasbro's part, as many, myself included, do believe that the articulation is inferior when comparing it to the likes of the Siege Starscream, and as demonstrated in this review, the core class Starscream is pretty much equally as articulated as the significantly larger Voyager. I would love Hasbro to take what they have done here with the Kingdom Core class, upscale it, of course, add additional details, paintwork, and a few extra joints just to refine the transformation, and perhaps add some wrist rotation and maybe some waist rotation, and I believe you've pretty much got the perfect Starscream. As far as head sculpts are concerned, I'm going to say straight away that I believe the core class better matches his appearance from the G1 show. I was never a huge fan of how the Earthrise version had a little more of a circular head design than compared to the more square box design, and referring back to the price point, this figure here is only $10, and I personally have had a heck of a lot of fun posing him around in robot mode, of course, transforming him back and forth from jet mode, and the jet mode too is very, very nicely done. So overall, if you haven't as of yet picked up any of the core class figures and you are looking to pick up your first just to test the line out, I would highly recommend that if you were going to pick up one, it would be core class Starscream. I would love to know down in the comment section below what you guys think. Do you believe that I'm being perhaps a little too forgiving giving of this particular figure? Do you believe I'm singing its praises too highly, or do you agree with me? I would love to know down in the comment section below. I really hope that you enjoyed this review. If you did, please do also let me know down in the comments, and until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.